Hello and welcome to Crushing Comics Season 2. We're back from our extremely long Christmas break.
Sabbatical.
Sabbatical. Our unpaid sabbatical from each other, really. That was the most important thing. We got a break from each other.
Good times.
Especially for me. I am the Colonel. With me is the secret blend of 11 herbs and spices that makes you crave the show every week. It's Liz, and I'm Paul. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Good.
Good to see you again, Paul, I say.
Where's the air quotes? Good to see you again, right?
Good times.
As always, it is I won't say pleasure to see you, but I'm certainly glad to have someone on the show.
Good to be back.
We are indeed very glad to be back for Season 2 of this show. Season 2 will hopefully be a bit different from Season 1. Not this week, though, because various technical issues have prevented us from doing everything we wanted to this week, and Liz can only apologise for her lack of technical knowledge. The thing that's causing the problems.
I dispute this wholeheartedly.
Well, one day I'm going to release a tell-all podcast that explains our sordid history, Liz, of all the things you've made go wrong on the pod.
Oh my God. Yeah.
No, it is great to see you again. It's great to be back reading comics for if not for our enjoyment, then certainly for everyone else's. We read comics so you don't have to. That's the way I look at it. No, and there have been some good, interesting things this week. We are going to talk about Sabertooth number one from Marvel. We are going to talk about Primos from AWA, New Masters number one from Image. We might also throw a brief conversation in about the Monkey Prince number one and the excellent number one. We'll see how we are for time.
And I might make mention of Dark Knights of Steel as well.
Indeed, yes. This is going to talk about Dark Knights of Steel, hopefully giving us a no spoiler version because I haven't read it yet. I'm warning you, Liz. Don't do it. Don't ruin the book.
I would never. How could I possibly? I'm not going to ruin it for anybody because everyone should be reading it and experiencing the surprises and joys for themselves.
It is a good book. It is a good book. I am really enjoying it. So Liz, why don't we talk about why don't we talk about Sabertooth number one? Because that was one of your picks for the week, and you're kind of a bit more in tune with the X universe than I am.
Another very good book this week that I didn't know exactly what to expect from, but I have to say I was really, pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it. So Sabertooth number one is written by Victor Lavelle with art by Leonard Kirk, colors by Rain Barreto, letters by VC's Corey Petit.
I'm never sure.
That's your main credits there in a nutshell. I hadn't read any Victor Lavalle's work before.
Right.
But he's actually he's an author. He's a well-known author of novels, I believe. But he also has done a few comics for Boom Studios.
Right.
Okay. Destroyer and Eve, neither of which I've read. But
man, I've got a feeling I read Eve way back when, not way back when, because it actually wasn't that long ago. But obviously with the weird time compression / distension that's gone on with COVID, I'm completely unsure.
Hard to say, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I've read some of his spring work, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I hadn't, but I really enjoy his voice and his style. And I felt like it really fit so well with this character. This book. So basically, where we left off with Sabretooth was actually quite a long time ago now. In terms of what's been happening with the X-Men. Sabretooth. The last time we saw him was in House of X.
Was
issue
it issue
3.
1? Oh,
Issue
issue 3,
3.
right.
Yeah, where he gets banished, for his crimes, against, the human race. The X-Men exile him to the pit of Krakoa.
Can I just ask you, does this sort of retell some of those events from its
It
own
sums
angle?
it up. All it does is it throws you right in, to catch you up with what that it has entailed. Because he's been there ever since, and it's been sort of a mystery as to what that looks like. But it just kind of throws you right in. And it all it does in terms of kind of giving you the backstory is there is like a summary page in Sabretooth's voice. Like, all of the kind of asides are in the voice of Sabretooth, some of which are very funny. He sort of talks about, well, where exactly is the pit in Krakoa? Like, and some of it's very comedic, is it, it's without sort of getting into it, I'll let anybody who wants to read it laugh for themselves when they read that page, but it's quite funny. A lot of it is because this character, he's very gleefully violent, very sarcastic. He's so there's a bit of comedy to be had in there as well, but also, as I say, with the violence, you got lots of like blood and gore as well. So where without giving too much away, what Victor has been experiencing in the pit is both his mind and body are confined to the pit. So he has been reliving the killing of his enemies over and over. So, it seems almost as though, oh, wow, he's, the X-Men have come from him and he kills them all. And then he's, going to escape. But actually, that's just what he is experiencing in his mind over and over. And then, to the point where he escapes, his memories are erased and he just so in a way it almost doesn't seem like a punishment for him, because he really enjoys killing the X-Men and all of his enemies. But when he finally he's approached by Cypher and sort of given a bit of leniency, so Cypher says, well, we can't free your body, we will free your mind. And so he kind of becomes aware that that's what's going on with him, and that gives him sort of a degree of agency as to what he does with that. So this is without sort of revealing the entire plot, that is what the pit of Krakoa looks like, and sort of his own version of he describes it as like hell to begin with, and it is a bit of a hell, but to a degree, once he sort of is able to free his mind, it becomes something else.
So does this we know we're now heading for, I don't know if you've heard about this, I'm sure you have, this Judgment Day crossover event with the Eternals and the X-Men, and I think the Avengers as well, where the X-Men are now going to be classed as deviants, basically. The mutants are considered, or are going to be considered, deviants. Do you get a sense with any of these one shots, or with this in particular, they're building towards that? Is there any mention of that, or is it just
not that I could tell? No.
Does it add anything to that wider mythos?
Hard to say. Not to that particular mythos, as far as I could tell from the first issue.
Just the wider, like the Hickman X-Men.
Well, yeah, I think it will do further along the line. I think that obviously this is an issue 1, and who knows exactly what direction it's going to take. But I do think that they wouldn't be having a series centered on this character if they weren't going to have some sort of ripple effect into the larger story. I don't,
and of course there is a wider connection to Wolverine, and that's currently run. There's the X Lives of Wolverine, 10 Lives of Wolverine, I guess, and 10 Deaths of Wolverine currently running.
Which everyone at That's Entertainment is commenting on how X Lives of Wolverine sounds like X Wives of Wolverine, and that's the series they actually want to read.
Well, I'm sure don't they go through some of his? Have you read any of this? Don't they go through? I've got the
I haven't read it yet, but I did find that quite funny. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds good.
As I say every time the X-Men come up, I'm not really a huge X-Men fan. However, I do like a bit of Wolverine. So I'm looking forward to kind of digging into that bit and some of the other older Wolverine stuff that's come out. But they're doing a Wolverine series based on his basically they're putting all the major events of Wolverine's life into a sort of chronology now. Have you heard about this? That's Marvel digital only.
Oh, okay.
Or digital first at least. Yeah. So that's currently running on Marvel Unlimited. Hickman remains a draw, and his universe obviously remains a big draw for people. I kind of left it after Hoxpox, which I really enjoyed. It's so weird.
I think that it's just a great time to be an X-Men fan,
right?
And this was just like a lot of fun, but also there were just some cool surprises, and it was actually one of those plot threads that's been left open for now, a couple of years now, and this sort of answers that question. Okay. So yeah, I recommend, absolutely.
And we still don't know what Hickman's next book is. Like we know that he's kind of going to be on the first issue of with Chris Bachalo of Moon Knight Black, White, and Blood, which is the anthology reduced palette kind of books that Marvel are doing, their equivalent of DC's Black and White. But there is rumors persisting of another secret book, which is going to be huge. And everyone thought it would be Spider-Man, which it turns out not to be the case, because that's going to be Zeb Wells and John Romita Jr. Obviously a big deal to have Romita Jr. returning to the Spider-Man universe, returning to Marvel. But yeah, we're still wondering what they do. Do you have any kind of, would you like to guess?
I really couldn't say at all. I mean, I'm happy to be surprised. Because he's really, at this point, as you say, Spider-Man would have been kind of the thing he hadn't done. Yeah. Because he's done Avengers, he's done Fantastic Four, he's done X-Men. Yeah. But there's so many, kind of niche characters it could be. If you've already done all the big ones, like, what are the big ones he hasn't done? I don't know. It's yeah, very true. Thor, there's Hulk, there's but it just completely no clue. Not a clue. Yeah. Not a guess, really. I'm happy for whatever it's going to be.
So it could be this Judgment Day thing that he's handling the X-Men side of that. I don't know. And in fact, there may have been an announcement towards that, and I just haven't, I'm not caught up. But audience, do you have a guess at what Hickman's next thing might be? What would you like it to be? Why don't you let us know in the comments? Because I'd love to hear from you guys as to what you think Hickman would be doing next. Liz would love to hear from you, I'm sure. Then I do have to say, just before we move on from this, I do want to mention the excellent number one. Now, I've not read any Ecstatics.
Neither have I. And that's it's quite an oversight, because I've been meaning to for years, because as a fan of Allred and Milligan, I've always had it talked up as a really fun book.
Now Ecstatics originally span out of X-Force, and then kind of got its own title, and there was a bunch of like specials and one shots, and
it gets revisited from time to time because it's kind of beloved. Like, it has this kind of like very dedicated cult fan base.
Yeah, and it's very irreverent, and this was, I mean, even going in, this kind of catches you up. Going in blind like this, this was a lot of fun. So I do want to say, if you're out there and you haven't picked that up yet, the excellent number one by Milligan, the All Reds, definitely worth looking. Like Milligan, I always say good things about Peter Milligan because he's always doing good books. Also worth checking out is Enigma, the reissued deluxe edition that's just come out. Can we talk a bit about New Masters? Would you mind if we jump onto that next?
All right, let's talk about New Masters next.
So there are 2 alien invasion books this week, of sorts, in a way. Primos and New Masters. They're actually kind of not alien invasions once you read them, but they were kind of both marketed as alien invasion books. New Masters gives us a really interesting kind of spin on a futuristic science fiction Earth, that rather than focusing on the Western world, actually focuses on Africa. And we're actually in Nigeria.
The African continent.
The African continent. Sorry, yes. Focusing on the African continent into Nigeria. And it's a fascinating angle. I really enjoyed this. I've never seen Shogun Shoff's work before.
I believe they have a background in like video game, sort of concept art and storyline.
Yes, and I believe they were. They've also done the comic series Buckhead, which is kind of on. I think that's Boom right now, and that's running at the moment.
I believe the history of this book was that it was chosen as the creator to be selected for the Creators grant.
Yeah, sure. And it has apparently been 10 years in the making. So we get a character who's kind of, I mean, I guess if we want a connection to the sci-fi that we know, it's Ray.
It's Ray. Yeah. She's a scavenger.
So an alien ship has crash landed in Nigeria at some point in the near future. But also we're looking at a world that has technologically moved on. The Western world is largely dead. New York's gone. Europe's gone. So it offers you this fascinating kind of world without Western influence, which is like, actually, this is great. It's just for me, it was just a really interesting kind of pitch. I didn't know what I'd make of the book. So we have characters who are partly cybernetic, like Ola herself is she's missing an arm, but has a robotic arm to replace it. She has a robot
of BB-8 type sidekick,
who helps her out as they kind of scavenge for this material called obsidian, which is like a type of fuel.
It's like vibranium in a way. Like, a lot of, so my touchstones for this were obviously Star Wars, obviously Black Panther.
Yeah.
But obviously, it is its own story as well. It's sci-fi fantasy. So a lot of those tropes will just feel familiar, anyway, and you just apply them to the things that about them.
Absolutely. And we have these kind of intergalactic relationships happening, which is interesting, because it gives you a future that's moved on from the kind of borders in both personal borders and geographical ones. I really love the style of this, the art and colors. I think Shogun Shof did the entire book themselves, so they've done writing, art, colors, the lot. They have a book designer, and Julme Christopher is their color assistant. The book designer is Hai Mardikian. I hope I've said that right, Mardikian. It was just a fascinating read, and I really liked the future world that it laid out.
It's very, very, like they know this world inside out. And you as the reader are sort of expected to keep up. They don't spell everything out for you. You're given a lot of information and this very deep mythos. And you some of it seems intentionally vague and obscure.
Right.
You're just sort of meant to be, kind of thrown in and along for the ride, and pick everything up as you go.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way it kind of peppers the dialogue with Nigerian dialect and language, and you just get it from the placement of the words and the syntax and stuff like that. You can really hear distinct voices in the book. It's a gorgeous looking book, and I think I'm definitely going to go to issue 2 on this. Like my normal thing is to kind of issue 1 and then either trade away or I'll carry on buying. But I think for this, I'm going to get the series.
Yeah, I mean, it's 6 issues. It's 6 issues. Mm-hmm.
But I just really enjoyed it. I love sci-fi. Almost kind of. I think I was talking to a friend about this, about things like I don't know if you've ever seen the film Push. I'm sure you have, with Chris Evans.
No.
Which is kind of set in a few. No, okay, so it's kind of X-Men, but set in the future where some people are psychic, some people are telepathic. Some people can, like, they are basically X-Men,
right?
And the film would be, I think, kind of mediocre, except that most of it is set in Hong Kong. And I just think sometimes shifting that environment and shifting to a different culture will start to open things up for you creatively. Obviously, this is their culture. They know more about it than you or I would. And I think that then gives you a kind of... I don't know what I'm looking for, really. It kind of gives you a different way into it.
Right.
And in a way, you are kind of scrabbling for 2 anchor points.
Right.
So one is the sci-fi universe, and the other is this other thing that's quote unquote foreign. Yeah, absolutely loved it. And definitely going to a second issue on that. And
this is not the only book this week, as you say, that is theoretically an alien invasion book, but also something that really dips into the culture of its characters. And...
So Primos number 1 from
AWA.
This is written by the comedian and actor Al Madrigal. It is drawn by, sorry, I just have to get the credits in front of me, Carlo Barberi, colors by Brian Reba, letters by Underworld Design. So this actually deals with the Mayan culture,
but also contemporary, like
Mexican,
sort of,
yeah. Which again is, I've been reading a lot of Kirby Eternals lately, just for something I'm doing on the site, and for the fact that Eternals is now on Disney Plus, and of course a lot is based on, I don't know if you I'm sure you know of this, but I don't know if you ever read Chariots of the Gods.
Right, which I haven't.
Yeah, so there is a definite connection there when you read Kirby's Eternals 2. No doubt he was reading Chariots of the Gods and just consuming it, because I think that was a big cultural thing, especially in the US, which talks about how there is a possibility that effectively these very old cultures, like the Mayans and the Aztecs, came from space. Like they're not kind of human-based cultures. I don't know if historically that has now been rubbished. I don't know how much I want to believe that, because is it a bit like saying, well, I believe in UFOs, and there was that zeitgeisty time in the 80s and 90s where UFOs were the thing, man.
Well, I think there's like the X-Files, sort of revved people up.
But it was just there, but it permeated, really deeply into the culture. and it never quite goes away. I guess once you open that box, that's it. You can't close it. But it doesn't have the same resonance now as it did then. And I don't know if I want to commit to saying that I believe this or I believe that.
Oh yeah, go on. Hey, the truth is out there, Paul. Go on.
What is really ironic that of the two of us, you're the more grounded on this, right?
Okay,
so you know, get this: Sabrina the Teenage Witch here is the one that doesn't believe.
I'm the skeptic.
I think. Look, I think anything is possible, and especially since in dealing with UFOs, you are dealing with possible science. You're not dealing with magic. You're dealing with science, right? The possibility of other life on other planets, visiting ours. Whether or not those things would have founded cultures, I really can't say. And there's been plenty of filmic stuff on this. I mean, like Prometheus a few years back, we dealt with that exactly. In terms of the book, I think this is a good, fun book. Structurally, I think it kind of could do with a bit of rejigging.
It's
but sorry, go on.
I'd be curious to know if this is Al Madrigal's first comics work.
I think it is. I think it came, judging from the back matter, it came from a meeting or like a conversation rather with Axel Alonso, who's also part Mexican. And they were kind of bemoaning the lack of Mexican heroes and characters. And here we have an interesting thing, which is, sci-fi spacemen plus superheroes. And that's kind of an interesting mix, I think. But I think structurally, it would have been better to keep the kid out of it for a lot. Like, I would have liked to have seen him at the beginning. And then, because I think I don't want to talk about the last few frames of the book, because
if you want to read it, you really want to experience that for yourself. But
I think that surprise would have been better if the book had been rooted in the Mayan culture right at the beginning, in the past, and then you realize, oh no, this is a contemporary book. I think I would have preferred that. However, I'm not sure what that would have done to the second issue if you had to introduce all these contemporary characters in issue 2, because I've seen that before, and it just the book just falls over flat. Yeah, unfortunately. So I don't know how you would have handled it.
I would agree with that to a degree. Like, I think Al Madrigal, and this is not like a hard criticism of him as a writer. I think that he's got the fact that you mentioned, because I didn't realize he was a comedian. The fact that you mentioned that makes a lot of, puts a lot of context into my reading of that now, because there were times when, it's just like, there's a lot of humor in it. Some of it, like a bit on the foul mouth side, except that they, rather than say the swears and everything.
That actually got on my nerves a bit, because
it was just a little too much. It was a little too much. And some of the jokes and some of, there was a lot of unnecessary repetition for, I would say, the first half of the book in some of the things, some of the jokes and some of the exposition, which I think would work well in maybe a movie script or something, or a TV script. But in a comic, it's you have to be a lot more sparing. So I do think a little bit of the first issue got chewed up with stuff like that. I don't see it as a big problem, because he did create a likable protagonist, and some likable supporting characters. Yeah. But I think, I would agree that, obviously everyone's first comic, it's a learning experience. And I do think he's got talent, and, I sort of would look forward to seeing him on, doing more books. But, I think I would like to see, it pared down a little bit more in the next issue. And hopefully so, because as I said, a lot of it was exposition that as we go, we won't really need that so much. So
absolutely. I just would have liked to maybe see a bit of a restructure on the book, but again, I can't speak and say that I know 100% I know more than that guy, because I certainly couldn't get up on stage and do jokes in front of people. I can barely do them on this show. Yes. It has been an incredibly diverse week, actually. I think,
and I don't want to leave that book on a bum note. Like, I do think it's I actually think it was it was quite, it was quite fun. I like the the themes of family, that sort of play out throughout it. Primos itself is actually the word cousins. And you can really tell that this is going to be a very family oriented book, with his mother, his brother, his cousins, and I think all of that has a lot of appeal.
Very true.
I like the fact that there was two editions of this book that came out: a Spanish language edition and an English language one. But even throughout the English language one, there's a lot of there's Spanish language peppered throughout.
I think that it's one of the things that's really key in those two books this week. Is they kind of bring in the culture to you, but also expecting you to kind of, as you said with
New Masters.
New Masters was catch up.
Yeah.
You catch up.
And keep up. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's been a thing lately. I mean, a lot of people were talking about Spielberg's version of West Side Story, where he's chosen not to include English subtitles for the Spanish-speaking sections of the film, which I don't know how I would feel about that, because I like to know everything that's going on,
Right.
So, but apparently it's kind of gone down quite well with audiences. Also speaking, different cultures. The Monkey Prince. This I don't want to get too deeply into this, just because we're running low on time. But this is a new character. You didn't get a chance to grab this, right?
No, I really, I'm bummed because I meant to grab it and I just forgot at the last minute. So unfortunately, I haven't read this, but I think I will do. Why don't you tell me a little bit about it, though?
So it is by oh God, my mind's gone a blank. I just need to get it in front of me. Jean Luan Yang, who wrote Superman, did the pencils, I think, for Superman Smashes the Clan. Bernard Chang is the artist. Sebastian Cheng is the colorist. Janice Chiang is the letterer. So this actually is kind of a Batman adjacent book, but kind of just uses him sparingly, which is good. It's not why I picked it up. I just picked it up because it looked kind of fun and bright and colorful. And what's interesting about the book, I don't want to say too much because you haven't read it. There is a small appearance from Damien, which I think you'll enjoy.
Oh yeah, I always enjoy Damien popping up in anything.
I suspect it'll be worth you kind of taking a look at it. But it's weird because the parents of the lead character in this are villains, or at least work for villains, and they work for villains knowingly in Gotham. So that puts an interesting spin, because that's kind of that takes me back to spoiler Stephanie Brown,
Yeah.
Then that will kind of color the book, but it also goes back into the territory of Chinese legends, and particularly one that's kind of actually quasi known to me from television in the 80s in the UK, which is there was a show called Monkey, the premise of which was that the Monkey Prince steals, I think, peaches from the magical garden, of his king and is exiled to Earth with 3 companions, Pixie, Sandy, and a monk. Now, this show was bizarre. It's
Never
such
saw
weird
it. Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Like, I know about it. I remember
yeah.
it was like a Gorillaz song.
Yeah.
You know, that I think plays into that same bit of folklore.
And there it was dubbed in the UK. So we never got to see the original sort of Chinese language version subtitled. And it was comedic / fantasy, I guess. But it would have been, for a lot of people, their first introduction to martial arts in the UK. And there was some bizarre stuff in it, and it plays into that legend. I'm kind of keen to see where it goes, because I don't know that Monkey was such a big thing in the US. So it's interesting to see it playing out in this book. I don't have too much to say about it, just because you haven't read it, and I kind of read it in a bit of a hurry, unfortunately. And you wanted to talk briefly about Dark Knights of Steel.
I just wanted to mention it because, I don't think we never talked about it on the podcast previously, did we? Like, I think that somehow or other we've always sort of managed to miss discussing it whenever it's come out. And it came out this week, and it's just so good. Like, I just want to talk about it because it's so great. It's every time I read an issue of it, it's just like the feeling I'm left with is like, oh, that was amazing. It's so great. I can't believe it, and that was like this week, just another killer issue with a great twist, like, that I did not see coming. And it's probably the book that gets me, the most excited every time I read it,
Sure.
that, that's going at the moment, I mean, that's, obviously a pretty big claim, but every time I put it down, I'm just like, wow, that was just so cool. So I don't want to say what happens, obviously, because you haven't read it. And anybody who's not reading it, because it seems like it's a little bit of a below the radar book, well, I mean, in a way, I mean, for example, like, the sub boxes at my shop, there's probably about 10 or 15 people subscribing to it, but, I feel like everyone should be. It's just,
sure.
I every time it comes out, I just want to like put it into the hands of all my customers, and send them off, and, just do the good work of getting everyone reading it.
I wonder, because it's an Elseworlds series, effectively, although they're not listing it as,
they're not calling it an Elseworlds, no. But it is.
It is an Elseworlds series, and I wonder if that kind of makes it a harder sell. Although, they commissioned 12 issues of this, so right. And it's Tom Taylor who does really well with
this kind of playground. Yeah.
I mean, I did not expect to enjoy Deceased, and I did.
Injustice, amazing.
Which I've still not read. I know you rave about it all the time,
his parts of Injustice are just incredible.
Right.
And like, this week's issue did something so unexpected and so cool.
I'm gonna try and read it. I probably won't get to read it tonight, but I'm gonna try and read it tomorrow, I think, in my lunch break. So I'll give it a look, and no doubt we'll be messaging you to say,
right.
Well, funny enough, so I picked up the first. I wasn't actually going to pick this up. I was going to walk trade weight. One of my colleagues, Olive, I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning her on the show, although I doubt she watches, so it won't make a difference. But one of my colleagues, Olive, had picked it up, and she went, "Oh, there's like a reveal in the first issue that I like just made me laugh, and I thought it was really interesting." And I was like, okay, so I'll look out for that. And of course, like, we, having read that first issue, know what that reveal is. And once I'd picked up that first issue, it was just like, oh yeah, now I'm in for the whole thing. It's just, I'll go through it. And it's interesting how much of the DCU it's encompassing.
Yes, and like I think I wrote a little short review for it on my website, but one of the things that I love about it, I mean it's Game of Thrones,
Yeah,
it's set in the DC universe. That's
right.
pretty much the nutshell
Or
premise for it,
utilizing DC characters.
utilizing DC characters. But it's also a little bit Marvel 1602 in that
Yes.
part of the fun is kind of figuring out which who they're talking about. A lot of the characters are given different names, or they're referred to as different things, but you can easily
Yes.
kind of figure out which DC character they're talking about. It's just really neat. It's just really, really neat. Like, I can't, I sort of recommend highly enough, for anyone who's a DC fan. It just it's able, with that premise, it's able to do some really interesting things with the characters.
Yeah. I'm keen to see where it goes, because like he really is throwing everything in there. Sorry, my chair seems to be kind of collapsing as I do this. He really does seem to be throwing everything in there, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, wait until you get to the end of this issue. Like,
okay, I'll definitely read it tomorrow, and no doubt we'll have a conversation. If not on the show next week,
right.
definitely via WhatsApp or something. So I just, before we go, I'm going to head off. Bored of this now, right? So
I've had it.
I do want to announce a couple of things coming up on the Comic Crush, or one thing really that's going to be hopefully going to expand into quite a big thing and an ongoing thing. So with the new Batman movie coming out in less than 3 weeks now from here,
wow.
4th of March, because February is of course a very short month. I'm starting a thing called the Year of the Bat on the Comic Crush. So it's going to be a mixture of articles, videos, podcasts. It's going to be a year's worth of stuff. It's probably actually going to go beyond the year, because I can't see me finishing everything I want to finish with it this year. But this is kind of a big year for Batman stuff. We've got the 10th anniversary of The Dark Knight Rises. We've got the 30th anniversary of Batman Returns. We've got the new Batman movie. So there's going to be a bunch of like brand new content on the site. As I say, it's going to expand into the videos, into the podcasts, into everything really. My goal is to have every aspect of the site kind of pushed towards this one thing at least once. So we're going to kick off. My goal is to kick off with the Batman reading list, which I did at Orbital as kind of a lark, really.
Mm-hmm.
Based on a guy called Colin Colsher. He did a thing called the chronological Batman reading list or something like that, which takes Batman's life as one large thing. So he did the modern age one, which runs from year 1 all the way up to the end of the DC universe for the New 52. So it was like 20 odd years of chronology, and I kind of ran with that and did something based on the trades we had available at Orbital. I'm going to redo that, but I'm going to go even more in depth than I went before. So you're going to get 1 or 2 of these a month. Hopefully there'll be a new title added. And I'm going to try and go as in depth as possible with each one. So starting with year 1, I'm about a third of the way or halfway through the article now. Hopefully it should be up and running by next week with some lovely sort of images, and we'll hopefully give you new information and shed new light on the creation of that book. Plus we're going to talk about the book itself. Liz and I are hopefully going to do some stuff. We don't know what yet. We haven't really discussed it at all. But it's going to be a year's worth of programming for the website, and I really hope you kind of dig in. And it doesn't mean any of the other stuff on the website is stopping. There's still going to be loads more reviews, articles, and this show coming back for a few weeks, and then we've got Moon Knight coming as well. We're going to be doing stuff on that. I'm really looking forward to digging into that with Liz, as always. So we've got a show planned for that will probably run concurrently with this show. So you may actually get a few weeks where you get two shows on a Saturday. And this is our new slot, by the way. I should have said this all at the beginning. This is our new slot, Saturday evening for now. Just to give us a bit more time to kind of dig into more books. Liz has a new working schedule. My working schedule has changed a bit. So we're kind of having to just move things around. But we still want to give you the show within the week that the comics come out. So yeah, we're going to be here every Saturday around, I'm going to aim for sort of 7:30, 8 p.m. Releasing time. I hope you'll stick with us and come along for that. And let us know how you find the new slot and how you're finding the show. That's it from us, I think, Liz.
I've enjoyed resuming our show now, and having the excuse to read some different
enjoyed
comics.
Is a strong word.
Well, I enjoyed the comics. I mean, the rest of it I can put up with, but speaking of comics, I get mine at That's Entertainment in Worcester, Massachusetts.
I get mine at Gosh Comics in London, England. So whichever side of the planet you're on.
Yep,
side of the Atlantic, rather. You can find your comics. Yes. So all those comics are available at those comic stores, as well as many other fine comic book stores. If you want to check out more new comics, there is a web shop on the Comic Crush, which you can get to quite easily. Have a look at that, because that helps support this. There is the Patreon, which also helps support this. I would love to, again, be able to pay my contributors, such as this fine person here, who does this thankless task every week.
It would be
and
nice.
has to part with me. Don't you think she deserves money for putting up with me? Actually, you know what, Liz? Can we tell people about what happened to your box of comics? Are we allowed to?
We can mention it, although it's very it's a very heavy, saddening topic for me.
So Liz recently moved back to the US a little while ago, just pre-pandemic, and her comics and all her things were sent afterwards. Unfortunately, one of her box of comics, and the stuff, the box unfortunately containing the rarer trades that she owned was damaged,
destroyed.
Yeah, destroyed, like irreparably. Like, I saw the pictures and it was just absolutely awful.
Yeah. Long box full of all my out of print beautiful books.
Yeah. Some really good stuff, which kind of, we might be able to find at various comic stores in various, in the UK but it's proven to be a bit of a struggle. You know what, Liz? I would like to help with that. And I would like the audience to help with that. So if, and I'm not saying you have to, but if you want to kind of sign on to the Patreon, even if it's just for a few months, I would like to try and commit a portion of that after the sort of initial cost of the website has been taken out, because that's what the Patreon pays for. And to be clear, the Patreon at the moment just pays for the basic cost, the monthly cost of the website. So I don't make a lot on the Patreon. I'll be brutally honest. I would love if more people were checking it out, but I actually want to help my buddy here get her comics back, because
well, that's very kind. But
it's just one of those things. I mean, it's not it's not a major incident. No one was hurt.
Oh, I was hurt
emotionally. No one was hospitalized. But I'd like to just do something fun and nice for my pal here, who comes and onto the show and takes the abuse every week. And does a brilliant job and remains a lot more informed and verbose about comics than I do, and you know, brings her A game to the show every week. I would love to kind of help out Liz if you'll let me. So I'm going to ask the audience to consider signing on to Patreon, even if it's just for a few months, to take the number up so I can try and help Liz out with. You can also, there is also a donations button for the PayPal. If you do that, I will redonate that money to Liz to help out with her comics. Just because I just want to do something nice for my pal. And I'm saying, you know, please help me do that. Because it is a shame. Like I saw.
Oh my God. It was like, I was devastated. It was awful. But
and you know, I always think trades are the big commitment. That's where you're saying, I want to keep this in my life. I want this book in my life, you know. So yeah, guys, you know, if you want to help out, please do. No pressure, but I you know, I would love it if you did. And then if you want to stick with helping the Patreon, it's great. There is like a £2 level, like a basic support level, and you still get stuff for that £2. You still get extra bonus material. We are going back at the end of every month, and we're going to start doing a bonus show, especially for the patrons. But yeah, come on, let's try and help Liz out. So yeah, thanks for listening. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in on the podcast. I do appreciate your ongoing support and love for the show. Feel free to drop us a comment, talk to us about anything really, anything comics related. And
we'd love that.
We will answer. We are talking about doing a maybe a monthly live show.
We'll see.
We'll see if that works. Inspired by all the fine work that our buddy Keith Isles does over on his channel, Home Media Minefield. Yeah. So, in fact, I've got a special show I need to talk to you about when we hang up this program, Liz. I've been saying goodbye for too long. So, guys, catch you later. Catch us on the Crush. All the details to follow us on Twitter and Instagram and all the other things are in the description box below. Utilize them, please. Follow us. Come and tell us how much you love the show. And we certainly love having you on board to listen. Liz, thank you.
Yep. See you next week.
See you next week.
Be back.
Yeah. It is good to be back. No, I'm really glad. I got a bit kind of twitchy not being on the show every week. So, guys, thanks for watching. Liz, thanks for coming along and doing this again. And we'll catch you next week on The Crush. Goodbye.
Bye.